right, so good afternoon, everyone. We are grateful to have you all here present today for this session by Research Dialogues, a jointly organized discussion series by the Philosophy Project and Let's Talk Tattva, both of which are student run platforms solely for philosophy. This dialogue series is envisioned as an active research community for early career researchers in philosophy, particularly current PhD candidates. The series invites both presenters and participants to engage in sustained, rigorous dialogue around ongoing research. Participation is premised on active engagement and meaningful contribution to discussions. I'm Tridip here. I'm representing the Philosophy Project, and I'll be your moderator for the day. Now, a few guidelines before we start. Everyone except for the speaker will be muted throughout the session for a smooth program. And if anybody wants to ask questions, please raise your hands or ask in the chat box below. We will have a discussion round after the speaker's done, so please note down your questions. We'll try our best to answer everyone's questions. All right, so our speaker today is Gautam, and the title of his topic is Reading Kleist through Žižek. All right, so Gautam is a first year PhD scholar at IIIT Delhi. His interests lie in German idealism, primarily Hegel and Žižek. He is currently working on the topic The Logic and Ontology of Contradiction and Dialectic with respect to Hegel. Additionally, he is also involved in bringing the speculative dialectical philosophy of Hegel and other dialecticians like Žižek to the level of popular understanding by translating the same into everyday idioms. Pleasure to have you here. Now over to you, Gordon. You can present now.
Hi. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Uh, just a question that do I need to open the camera or is it okay if I present without without camera and yeah, actually, and also is my screen visible?
Not currently. It was
Okay,
visible earlier.
let
I
me
mean,
share that.
about the camera, we would appreciate if you turn on your video, but if it's not possible, I guess that's also fine.
Actually, when I'm turning my video on, I'm not able to share my screen somehow. I
That's
don't
all
know
right
why.
then. That's all
Okay.
right.
You can turn it on in the question session after you finish presentation.
Yeah.
Okay. I think my screen is visible now.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay. So hi. This is a kind of a side project that I'm doing along with my PhD. Uh, in my PhD, I'm generally I'm specifically focusing on Hegel and German idealism. But there it is very much of a scholastic work, and I thought that it is good if I present literature through philosophy. For example, if I present speculative dialectical thinking of Hegel through reading by reading some literary text, and uh, why I chose Kleist is because first let me introduce Kleist. Kleist Heinrich von Kleist was a German writer, poet, generalist, and dramatist who lived from this time. And these are the you can see on screen what are the major themes of his writings. And the main reason that I chose Kleist was first of all was the very content of his work, like on what themes he chose to write. And the second is that his manner of suicide, it's very much linked to his personal life. In one of his stories that the paper that I shared with you guys, in the story called uh, Betrothal at Saint Domingo. There, the protagonist killed his lover, and after killing her, he shot himself dead. And Kleist also died in a very much similar way. So it's a very interesting sort of thing to. This is the reason precisely why I chose Kleist. And the second reason is that Kleist was a contemporary of Hegel, and when Kleist was in Kleist's lifetime, the philosophical movement of German idealism was at its peak. So one instance from Kleist's personal life is very important. Like at the age of 23, Kleist read Kant, his Critique of Pure Reason, and he became uh, a sort of very perplexed after reading Kant. That because there Kant showed, as famously we say that reason is inherently limited because it is necessarily limited. So one can't really achieve the sort of thing which as a philosopher we want ourselves to achieve. So this at the age of 23 was a moment for Kleist where he intellectually as well as personally got very dismantled in the sense that uh, every hope and every wish to order reality, to conceive reality in a very logical manner was destroyed by reading Kant. And I wonder why Kleist couldn't read Hegel, because Kleist died in 1811 and Hegel wrote his Phenomenology in 1806 or 7. So yeah, I mean these are the reasons why I chose Kleist. And so yeah, this was Kleist, and the second main thinker here is Hegel. So Hegel is Hegel. He doesn't need any introduction. And I read both of these thinkers through Žižek, like through the inspiration or the framework which I derived from reading Žižek's work. So yes, actually there is a small correction here. I uh, I wanted to do two short stories and one anecdote, but I think the stories are not really short, but quite long, and so I think I would only be able to do one story, which is the I think the more important one, the duel. So and another one, the anecdote is in addition. Like I substitute this anecdote for the another story, which is the betrothal one. So yes, so let me summarize this story. You can also read here. So yeah, the king, there was a king, and he was killed by his brother. So his brother's name was Rodbart, and but like due to a sort of uh, due to politeness or some sort of like Rodbart really wanted to project himself as innocent. So he, despite killing his brother for his throne, he made the son of his brother as the new king, so that no one should think that he had killed his brother. So, but yeah, so everything was sorted out there. Yeah, he made his brother's son the new king, so he is not really guilty. But then again, in the investigation, it was found that the arrow through which the king was killed was somehow linked to Rodberg. So the suspicion against directed against him. So the queen, the dead king's wife, was very much sort of chill. Like she doesn't really want to bring again this suspicion upon Rodbert, because he was actually in very good terms with her. So yeah, but again, uh, the messenger some like but anyhow the queen sent her messenger to Rodbert that this is your name, and your name has been linked to somehow the weapon through which your brother was killed. And Rodbert then did something very like something extraordinary. He himself said that yes, if you think that I have killed my brother, I should be the one who will initiate the trial. No, no. Like, and he went to the emperor and said that the trial should happen. So in the trial, when he presented his evidence that on the night on which at the night on which king was killed, he Rodbert was not in his own fort. So he was actually outside his premises, and he went actually at the place where the king was killed. But he said that I went there to meet his supposed lover, Litigard. Litigard, Litigard is very famous. Like Litigard is famous as I have written here, famous for her quote unquote clean character. She was a widow, and she was living with her brother and father. And he said that he went to meet Litigard, and as an evidence, he presented that when he met Litigard, uh, she gave him her ring, which she got from her dead husband as a token of love. And yeah, but Litigard was, I mean, truly innocent. Like Litigard uh, was not there actually, in that I will explain how. So after this evidence has been presented to the court, everyone was sort of become against Litigard, and she now has to prove how she is innocent. So yeah, till this moment, the king, the Rodbert, is successful in presenting himself as if he has not killed his brother, and he went outside his premises to meet his lover, which was Litigard. So now, Litigard was, and the second main thing is that Litigard did not have anything to prove her case, because her maid, which is sort of her right hand, uh, went from like took a leave from her by saying that she has to go to her sister's house. So she doesn't have anything to prove her case. So, so yeah, she was exiled from her house, and she went to her old friend Trota, and he came to the emperor and said that, no, like, he was the only one who was believing Litigard, and he was her old friend, and he said to the emperor and to the court that yes, that Litigard was innocent. So, like, and there was like this one contention of Rodbat against the another contention was put it, and the king said, okay, so let's decide by a duel. So in a duel, uh, the the duel was like, I don't want to go in detail, but in duel, the Rotbat only got a one single scratch, just a single scratch, and which was literally nothing. And Trota was technically destroyed by Rotbat, and also he was very brave. But, but so at that moment of time, Rotbat lost the battle, but he was not killed. So in a duel, I think the main deciding factor is that first the one of the opponent has to lose, but and that the one who is lost has to die also. So like has to be killed. So but Trota was not killed. So it was decided that yes, it was Rodbat who was saying the truth, and the Litigard was put into jail to so and but still Trota was still believing her. So after some time, the scratch which Rodbat got from the duel turned like developed into a very deadly disease, and he came onto the verge of dying, and Trota, on the other hand, was recovering at a very good pace. So the situation reversed, and then everyone got perplexed that how this could have happened. So that the one who has lost the battle now he is recovering, and the one who was the winner is on the verge of dying. And at the end of the story, it became clear that something very dialectical and speculative have happened in this story. So the moment when Rodbad went to meet Litigard, he uh, he actually met his Litigard's maid. So actually, the thing was that when Rodbad actually was believing that Litigard love him. So when he first wrote a letter to Litigard that I am coming on this and this day to meet you, which Litigard never got. It was intercepted by her maid. Her maid was actually very interested in Rodbat and uh, dressed herself as Litigard, and it was her maid that actually met the Rodbat on that night on which the king was killed. So Rodbat, in her own mind, met Litigard, but it was not Litigard. So I want to say that this very moment is very important, where Rodbat and Litigard, both of these opponents, was like both of the opponents were living in an illusion. Like Rodbert was thinking he was meeting Litigard, and Litigard was not thinking anything, but Litigard was an illusion because she was defied by her maid. She was betrayed by her maid because her maid was the one who was playing the game here. So yeah, okay. Rodbat and Litigard, both Rodbat actually staged an illusion, sort of. He staged an illusion that I will kill my brother, and when they will say where I was, and I will say that I was meeting Litigard, and I have this evidence also, her ring, which I will show, and so no one will be able to do anything to me. So this very illusion was in itself an illusion. So I want to say we should look here very dialectically on how this happened. First, there was an illusion where Rothbard changed this meeting to prove that he was not involved in his brother's killing. But at the end, this meeting itself, this illusion itself, was like turned out to be truly an illusion. So illusion is an illusion. So therefore, illusion is not truly a reality. You know, illusion is not really an illusion. Illusion is illusion, but illusion is not an illusion just because it has truly proved itself to be an illusion. So I think, yeah, sorry, I think this is not important. We should remain here only. So yeah, the impossibility for litigant. No, 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 this is the very important moment. Uh, yeah, the impossibility for litigant to prove her innocence. First, like she had no one as her witness. Second, her ring was with Rodbert, so both were evidence against her. Was exactly because she was really innocent. So I mean, why litigant was innocent? Because she was not there. Uh, I hope you are following me. Like the litigant was not the guilty just because she was not able to prove that she was not guilty. So here also, like the very impossibility of proving herself not guilty proves that she like it's constitutive of the very it's logically and structurally necessary for her to be innocent. Like in simple words, we can say that litigant was innocent just because litigant was not able to prove that she was not guilty. This very fact itself is structurally or logically or dialectically or maybe we can also say speculatively connected or even identical with the fact that she was not guilty. So this is the I mean dialectical moment which I found very interesting, and here I think we should introduce Hegel's idea of Hegel's idea of necessity and contingency and identity and difference. But first, let me talk about this. Yeah, this moment of truth is the truth of illusion of Rodbert also. The illusion which Rodbert put for everyone else was illusion for him also. Like as we say that the manipulator manipulates himself. So it was actually Rothbard who was the one who sort of pushed himself in a kind of self-destruction just because he was putting a veil, a kind of semblance that he's innocent, like that he met Litigard, which he also was believing that he actually have met Litigard. But the fact was that he didn't meet Litigard, and this very truth of him not meeting his supposed lover was driving him to the way of self destruction to the extent that uh, he actually believed that he had met Litigard, but only because and this very certainty of Rodbert himself that he had met his lover is necessarily connected with his Litigard's impossibility of proving that she hasn't met Rodbert. First there is Rodbert who believes and who is certain that he had met Litigard. This very thing is necessarily connected with the second with Litigard's impossibility of proving. So here again, the two opposites coincide very much dialectically, and and yes, this brings us to the. Yeah, I think this idea is not important yet. So I want to say that uh, like we can introduce Hegel here. Like it has already been here. Uh, for example, let's say Hegel's idea of necessity and contingency. And first, necessity in Hegel is not something which is over and above the contingent affairs of the world. For example, let's say the bag is there or the man stands at the door. These are very contingent things. But first thing Hegel says that the contingency which in the sense of either or, like either there is a man or there is not a man on the door, it is logically the necessity of contingency. It has the in the idiom of possibility and impossibility, possibility and actuality, we can say that every possibility is always already actualized, because the possibility between whether it will rain or not, it is an actual possibility, structurally speaking. So yes, uh, I want to say that these events, like when Rothbard went there and he believed that he met Litigard, but he actually didn't meet her. So these are the events which are in themselves are their contingent. But when we think of in a retrospective fashion, the destruction, the self-destruction which Rodbert have brought to himself was not possible without this very contingent acts of meeting, of going there and killing his brother and then staging this illusion that he has met Litigard. So I'm saying that necessity, first there is necessity against contingency. Here we see that necessity is kind of overarching force which determines or which shapes the contingent events of the world, and which yeah, and contingency is some sort of chaotic reality outside the subject. Uh, this is the first case where necessity and contingency are posed against each other. Then there comes this second idea, which is a dialectical idea, that necessity is nothing but necessity of contingency. The contingency is always already there, and necessity is only derived from by tarrying with the contingent events, like how one thing leads to the another. And I think this second moment leads to the third, more dialectical and speculative. Dialectical, the second one is dialectical moment, and third one is speculative moment, where actually the two opposites coincide, where necessity becomes contingent in itself, where necessity relates only with itself, where necessity becomes self-relating, self-negating, and self-differentiating sort of necessity. And it it immediately turns into a pure contingency. But contingency is not something which this necessity itself is. Contingency is still that events which are outside. So necessity negates itself. It founds itself in these contingencies. And then again, like it recognizes that these contingencies are the sort of mediation that necessity itself needs to be necessity in the first place. So again, yeah. So, the next is the anecdote which Kleist wrote. Like the anecdote title is "On the Puppet Theater." It's a very famous anecdote. So here, the main idea here is that the main idea is to pose a dichotomy of thought and act. The Kleist has also written a famous essay called "On Gradual Transformation of Thoughts While Thinking." There, Kleist said that. Uh, One has really to think out loud. These were his words: think out loud. One can't really think what one will say and then say. So one necessarily has to speak in the dimension of speaking in the first place. If the very possibility of thought has to be has to be actualized. For example, in this very on the puppet theater, there were mainly there was a case where a man went to the one who was doing this puppet thing, and the puppeteer said that he actually know a law, or some kind of yeah, law, or some technique which doesn't need really a human to perform this theatrical act. And Kleist said this because he really wanted to put the dichotomy between human, which is a finite being who thinks and who makes mistakes, and the one and the technological feat that we have achieved, the technique. For example, let's take the example of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence apparently has a sort of perfection, which even if it is a mechanical one, still it is a perfection which human can't have. So here also in the on the puppet theater, there was uh, the idea was that we make mistakes just because we are thinking big, because we are this conscious being. We have reflection, we have thinking. So we out of necessity make mistakes. So the main idea that Kleist was indicating at was that in order really to come out of ourselves, we have to have some kind of this coming out of ourselves. This doing before thinking. That's why this idea of act is very important. So doing something unconsciously, and then out of in a retrospective manner we derive how we get there. So this was
Gautam,
the I
just a second, sorry. You have 5 more minutes to wrap up, okay?
actually can I have 10 minutes? Actually, this is the most important slide, the fourth one.
Yeah, of course. Sure,
Okay,
10
thank you.
minutes.
Thank you. So yeah, the main point was that okay, so I should jump somewhere. The main idea of life was that this human person, or as a subject, uh, human is like utterly and necessarily limited, and limited in the sense that the subject is here, as to quote Žižek, is a divided subject which is divided from itself. So every identity is a kind of uh, a veil or a paper over the division or the non-identity which the subject itself is. The subject is a non-identity against itself. So when subject is a non-identity against itself and for itself also. Let me explain this. So let me bring this dialectic of identity and difference. So first there is identity and difference. So let's say this is a stage of, this is a very innocent kind of state, like where identity and difference are indifferent to each other, existing very peacefully in a very harmonious manner. So that's why I have written that this is a Garden of Eden kind of stage where no one really cares about what the other is, so everyone is enjoying. And the second moment is where identity and difference, just because they are self-identical to themselves, becomes contrary to each other, because identity is after all identity, and it is different from difference. The difference is also identical with itself as difference and differ from identity. So again, they become contrary to each other, and they exist in a kind of independent atomicity. So identity for itself became identical with itself, difference for itself became identical with itself. So they are now existing in these kind of determinations which are independent from each other. The third dialectical moment comes when identity and difference, both, especially identity, recognizes that it can't really be an identity if it differs itself from difference. So identity has to some sort of include difference in itself, so that it can become identity at a more higher level. So yes, identity recognizes that it is only through difference that a space for difference is created, because it is very constitutive of identity itself. So the identity recognizes that in it is only relatively possible. It is possible only in relation to, or in relation against difference. So I think the fourth, this is the third moment. The fourth dialectical and speculative moment came when identity is differentiated from itself. So first there was identity and difference indifferent to each other, then identity and difference against each other, then identity of identity and difference. Then the fourth stage comes when identity is differentiated from itself. But identity differentiates from itself just at the moment when identity becomes purely identical. Let's say this example, this tautological example of Jack is Jack. For example, if we say Jack is Jack, it is a tautology, and it is in classical logic we say that it is uh, in every possible way true, a true proposition. Jack is an analytic proposition. But just because it is a pure identity, it is a pure identical proposition, it is different. It differentiates from itself. For example, Jack is simultaneously at the position of subject and predicate. So Jack is again divided from itself. So identity, when it comes like it comes at its peak, at its moment of purity, immediately becomes self-contradictory. So this point, Jack is Jack, or like the point of tautology, is a point where identity becomes identity, but identity sort of uh, identity becomes self-destituted also. And now as I said, the pure identity gets itself sublated into self-contradiction. Similarly, pure difference is that which is purely self-relating, self-negating, and self-differentiated. Again, the example is Jack is Jack. For example, identity when it becomes identical to itself, it got sublated itself into difference or contradiction. Similarly, difference also when it becomes identical to itself. For example, difference is self-related, self-negating, and self-identical. If a difference is self-identical, it would become actually it would need uh, identity to become self-identical. So difference can only be self-identical by being self-differentiated. So the moment of purity in the case of difference is that where difference becomes self-relating, self-negating, and self-differentiating. Identity is identical to itself. Difference is different to itself. Difference differentiates itself from itself. So again, here example is Jack is Jack. So I mean, so yeah, this very tautological proposition is that where opposites coincide. For example, the moment of purity of identity and the moment of purity of difference. Identity being identical to itself, and difference being different to itself. This is the moment where identity and difference in their purity actually coincide. So actually, yeah, this is what I wanted to highlight.
Right, thank you for the presentation. Anybody who has any question can raise their hands and ask, or you can just unmute yourself and then ask. Yes, Aisha.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, we can hear
Hello.
you. Yes,
Oh,
sir.
you can hear me. Um, so Gautam, thank you for your presentation. I just have this question. Uh, you gave us this example of this. You narrated this short story and then you narrated this anecdote. Okay. But one thing is that I can't actually get the link or the connection between, the short story and the anecdote and Hegel's dictions that made between identity and this. Could you like explain with the help of the story, maybe the theory of difference between identity and difference? I can't actually make the connection.
Okay. I think if we can do this, let's say that okay.
Yeah, I just
Am I
wanted to
visible?
know, the relevance of the anecdote and the short story. What's the
Yeah, I
relevance?
think I think the anecdote is in a way a personalization of, for example, the character of Litigard. The character of Litigard is a personalization of the category of difference. For example, in difference, the peak moment comes when difference become pure at its moment of purity, differentiated from itself. So the condition of Litigard is exactly that. Litigard was thinking that Litigard knew that she is not guilty, but there is literally nothing materially evident to prove that she is not guilty. But she was not guilty precisely because there was nothing materially evident to prove that she is not guilty. So again, difference in its purity has to become a sort of mediated with identity. I think if we I'm not very well versed in psychoanalysis, but if we can introduce that the condition, the side of difference is the side of hysteric. The hysteric knows that there is nothing outside the illusion, the appearance, but yet she doesn't find herself in appearance. So a hysterical subject is always out of joint from a given terrain of identity or any sort of thing. So yeah, I was just saying that the character of Litigard uh, is a personification of the category of difference, and the character of Rodbite is the personification of category of identity. Identity in a very bullheaded fashion went on being identical to itself and to coming to a moment of purity, only to know that when it becomes pure, it becomes self-contradictory. So similarly, in Rothbard also, Rothbard went on to do these things like, and he was actually believing that he had met Hildegard, So that's why I'm putting Rothbard in the category of identity. So yeah. On the other hand, Litigard, Litigard was Litigard knew the truth, but there was nothing material, there was nothing logically evident to prove that she is not guilty. So similarly, in the case of difference is pure, but difference knows that it can be pure only when it differs from itself. So again, the moment of purity comes in the case of difference only when difference comes at the moment of a kind of undead existence. Undead existence in the sense that difference start living its own life, its own death in his life. So yeah, I think does this answer your question?
Yes, yes. Thank you. It does. Thank you for explaining.
Yes, I see one more hand raised. Please unmute yourself.
Uh, Hello, am I audible to you?
Yes.
So thank you, Gautam. Like most of the things that I didn't get, like I am unaware of uh, what how Žižek is trying to read Kleist. So, but one thing that really I wanted to understand, because let's say when you talk about the interpretation or the meaning of a story, so like when you read a story through philosophy, though I read religion, I'm from theology. So Paul Ricord makes this distinction between the cognitive use of an interpretation and the and non-cognitive use of an interpretation of a story. And he says that this non-cognitive, which is, he also calls it as figurative. So this figurative meaning is generally, appears to be in, let's say, when we understand a uh, writing, literary piece or writing. And this figurative meaning, what he calls as, it gives this extra in language, what he calls as the surplus of meaning in a language. So let's say when you're reading Hegel, are you trying to understand Kleist via this cognitive meaning that is attached to the story? Or are you taking this surplus or this extra linguistic entity, the figurative meaning of that interpretation? So, like, I was unable to get like how you're trying to understand, like, you mentioned about this idea of necessity and contingency. So, are you trying to understand these literary moments or events simply in the very cognitive fashions or in a very figurative sense? Now, I have one more thing, like, it's just a clarification. So, you mentioned that there are several, you were mentioning something about this dialectical moments that are happening, in the story itself. So are you saying that these dialectical moments that are happening in the story, are they happening as separate events in the story? Or are these dialectical moments simply connected to this larger meaning that the story is trying to convey? So these are two of my questions.
Okay. To the first question, my answer is that like, if you are asking that am I doing a kind of metaphorical reading of the story in order to get at Hegel, my answer is that it is both. Like I am reading Kleist so that I can understand Hegel, and I can under reading Hegel so that I can see like how Kleist is always already like in a very unconscious manner was always a Hegelian, so to say. Hegelian, not in the sense that he was actually practicing dialectics, but he, like again, to say it very metaphorically, to Kleist was dialectic himself. So yeah, like I am saying that it is always a both ways. Like to put it in a simple way, I can say that I am practicing a kind of uh, personification of categories of concepts and impersonification of character. So yeah, they are connected, but in a very antagonistic manner. So they can't really get to each other. Like they can't really meet, but they meet like divided they stand and united they fall. this kind of on this kind of thinking I'm talking about. Like uh, let's return to the moment when Litigard met when Rothbard met Litigard's maid. So I think this is the moment of where we logically find a tautology. Rothbard met Litigard, but tautology, which is contradiction, but he actually didn't met Litigard. It is not really metaphorical. I, I, I think it's very literal. And your second question, can you repeat your second question?
So it was more about like you were mentioning how these dialectical moments that are happening in the story itself. So I'm saying that are you trying to say that there are these dialectical moments are separately happening in each event that are happening in the story itself? Or let's say, are these dialectical moments connected to this larger meaning which the story is trying to convey? So because
The larger meaning is story itself. No, there is no meaning outside the story. The story in a very perfect manner materializes and embodies what it means to think dialectically. That's why the moments in the story are of course apparently they are separate moments, uh, but in like they do not form any organic whole that we can derive any meaning. Uh, Indeed, I think in the very singular action of meeting of this triple kind of meeting is more important than the whole the whole of the story. So yeah, that's why I think that they are connected, but they do not form any organic whole that any higher meaning comes we can derive from them. They are meaning, like they are their own meaning.
Hello, Gautam. Thank you and well done with your portrayal of the connection between the anecdote and the story. But because you have started from differentiating between dialectic and speculation, could you identify how, when, and where those moments are separate in the connection between the story and the anecdote? Even when in the in because you are seeing the anecdote in the story and the story in the anecdote, and personalization in the character of Littagard and Rotard, the character categories of difference and identity. Where are the moments of dialectic on the one hand and speculation on the other in this connection that you are drawing? So it's such that this question becomes personal to how you draw and explain the connection. And the second question, relatedly, also is that why did not you choose the idiom of idealism and materialism, or ideal and material as categories to explain the characters in the story also? Thank you.
Okay. Uh, to the first question, I think that to differentiate between dialectic and speculative is again a matter of perspectival shift. Like I was reading a book by Tahir Ali Reza. Its title was Hegelian Lacanian Variations of Modernity. There he differentiates between dialectic and speculative. And speculative is the moment where, if I am remembering correctly, that the the paradox, the contradiction is raised to a certain level where it sublates itself, and dialectic is the level where there is always a chaos. The one moment uh, vanishing into its own other, and the other again vanishes into its own, this kind of thing. The speculative moment comes when the negation is always already contained like in the subject, let's say. And this in precisely in the story duel, the moment again the moment where Litigard and Rodbat met but actually never met. But at the level of evidence they met, but truly they never met on that night. So this very moment is a speculative moment, because here, it is also dialectical moment, I must say, because uh, dialectic and speculative can't really, they are different, but they are different only when we transfer ourselves to speculative moment. For example, the difference between dialectic and speculative is just a matter of uh, perspectival shift, or Zizek would say it is a parallax shift. And Zizek actually says that the speculative moment is also dialectical moment, but yeah, we can. I think we can also change the use them interchangeably. But the my intention was in differentiating them was that uh, speculative moment is in some way a peak moment in a dialectical process when only only when we comes to an utter negation that we for example, we can also say dialectics work in a kind of relativistic fashion. For example, something is only because uh, it is externally mediated by something other. Something other is externally there to constitute this thing. But the moment of speculative comes when this something in itself stands differentiated from itself. There is no other. So when we come to acknowledge that we actually like the other is actually materialization of the difference which one like my the difference which separates me from myself. So this kind of thing. So speculative is a not a higher stage but a true stage of dialectic, because in dialectic there are still dualities. The one thing is constituted by its other, because logically it is what it is only because it is not what it is not. So in speculative, the thing itself becomes the thing that which it is not. So immediately and the speculative moment is the moment of, let's say, spontaneity. The in speculative moment, there is one singular thing, and that one thing is divided from itself. So and again that the only identity it has is the identity like is its pure difference, the identity of pure difference. But that difference itself also comes in the language of identity. For example, the difference can become pure, like in every sense, only when it differs from itself. So this I am talking the in speculative there is only one thing which is both dialectical and speculative, and in dialectic there are two things. So uh, I think this was your first question, and the second, why didn't I use materialism and idealism? I don't really know, because I didn't really come like um, for example, let's say with the example of which Zizek says vulgar materialism, that consciousness is nothing but a product of material conditions or materiality, or the consciousness phenomenological first person perspective is nothing uh, uh, but that piece of meat which our brain is. So this kind of thing is always there, but I think we can locate it in Kleist. But in Kleist, the more important thing is the role of subjectivity. So I forget to mention it in my presentation. Actually, the subjectivity is that in Hegel, uh, in phenomenology as well as in science of logic, we started from something and then we encounter contradiction. Then again we encounter contradiction. We formulate something more clearly. Then again at the end we recognize that contradiction is the truth. The absolute truth is that there is contradiction. But this very moment, this objectivity comes through subjectivity. And if we look this story, the the absolute contradiction which Rothbard encounters at the end could not have been possible if Rothbard would have been an honest person. The Rothbard did something wrong, and that wrong action necessarily leads toward the wrong, which is a kind of objective wrong. Zizek calls it the idea of ontological cheating. The reality itself, the Rothbard did something. He cheat on something, and then he came to the like came to the truth that the reality itself is a kind of cheating with itself. So these two moments, the first one is subjective moment, the second one is ontological objective moment. The second moment comes only through this contingent first moment. So that's like I can like let's introduce here Hegel's famous phrase that not only as a substance but also as subject. The truth which is contradiction is true only when we come to it, like only when we as a subject does something, like act something in a way, act not in a very empirical sense of act, but act in the sense, as I mentioned in my presentation, act in where act changes the very coordinates of what it means to act. Where we recognize that this contradiction is the ultimate truth. So yes.
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, Nikita.
Hi, Gautam. So nice to hear your presentation. Am I audible?
Yes.
My question is I was very interested to see the role or the character of the maid in this case. And I wanted to understand just like how you personified the various characters in the story. For example, Roberta as a personification of identity. In this case, how would you maybe classify or characterize or metaphorize? In any which case, how would you look at the character of maid and her attempt to want to convince others that she was maybe the other character? I'm sorry, I'm forgetting her name. Litigard? Yes.
I think first we can think of the maid as a very empirical person who who actively did something which constitutes this whole chaos. Uh, but I think we can also look at the character of maid in a very. I think the maid should be like I really have to think about it, but the maid actually personifies or personifies negativity. I think the negativity which was inherent, the absolute contradiction which was the constitution, the constitutive of this whole game, if maid would not have been there. But I think the maid is a kind of objectal counterpoint. Objectal counterpoint is a term which Žižek uses. If we take Rodbat as a kind on the place of subject, then who is divided against himself, then maid would be the one who is a kind of object which can't be symbolized. The Rodbat is the one who is on a rail to symbolize everything or to contain everything, and maid is the one which actually slips over from slips slips over from his gaze or his gamut. So yeah, I current like at the moment I can only think of maid as like this kind of thing. But I really need time to think about how I uh, would put maid in this constellation.
Nonetheless, it was very interesting to hear you talk about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
But if we can ask, Nikita, do you have any suggestion for that? Like, how do you see her?
Uh, First of all, not a philosophy major, so I will be taking the whole story in a very literal manner. And when I look at the character of the maid, it's very interesting. Even while Gautam was speaking, I heard him say things like, the fact that there's a contradiction, and that is where while Roberta is also trying to convince himself of a truth by meeting it, he's trying to actualize the possibility. In the same way, I feel like she's also doing something like that. And if then we say that Roberta, from the very beginning, acted improper, then maybe that is also the case with the maid, because she went outside her this thing to want to um, maybe want to become closer to Roberta as a character, or for whatever intentions that she had. I think so. All of these ruminations made me ask the question that in this constellation, exactly where would Roberta lie?
It was actually very interesting to point out like how should I place the character of maid. But I think if we want to say that everything destroys itself out of necessity, then maid is a kind of character that has to erase herself. The the very act of maid cheating both Rodbat and Littleguard should in itself be should be taken in a very not in a very empirical sense that this was the moment that changed everything, but in a very logical manner that this very contingent act of made has to be there. So without this action, nothing could have been possible. So yeah, there is always a sense of self erasure and the presence of this absence also, the presence of this erasure also in the story. This erasure can come also in the story. It came as a very kind of a contingent event, like what if the maid was honest? The story, structurally speaking, the story would also not be there. So that's why the moment is very important. That which the empirical act of the maid is in a way less important than the structural presence, the structural location of maid. But yeah, again, the structural location became possible only when maid committed this act. So again, here is also dialectic of necessity and contingency. Everything has to destroy itself, but it destroys itself only when someone took the charge. In this case, it was maid.
It's also very interesting how Roberta and Maid both go in very different directions in trying to rise above themselves. While Roberta tries to challenge, I mean, he's looking out for himself, but at the same time, he's also trying to challenge what is happening. And there's also a simultaneous tension between him and Litigard. While in the case of Maid, it seems like she's acting, might be a wrong interpretation, but might be acting in a very self interested way. I mean, she's trying to rise above herself and she puts herself in the focus more, which is also the case with Roberta, but it's also very distinct. They're both acting in very different ways in this case, while trying to rise above the circumstances that are present to them, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I think, but I think we should think of every character as only a character, like in the sense that every like the character itself doesn't know uh, on which place, like on what place it is there in the story. For example, the maid. I want to say that like it is possible to say that the maid self acted in self, like everyone acted in self in the self interest, but this very self-interested act is a kind of, that's why I focus on very much on dialectical or speculative thinking, because this contingent event is not truly a contingent event. It is a necessary event, but again, it is a necessary event only because it is contingent. So yeah, I think I am like I'm able to articulate clearly what I'm saying. Like this, the empirical act of maid to cheat both Litigard and Rodbat is a structural necessity. But again, like it is a necessity only because she actually did that. So yeah.
No more questions. Thank you so much.
Right. So there is another question in the chat box. It's by Mercy. Mercy, do you want to say it out, or do you want me to read it? Can you use your mic, Mercy? Probably not. I'll just read it out. Okay, so thank you, Gordon. Are you taking character who cannot prove her innocence at the level of pure difference, pure signifier, which doesn't have any other difference, signifier, or signified to latch onto? Gautam, you can also check out her question in the chat box.
Yeah, I think I think it becomes very complicated because when I say difference, like what I mean by the word pure difference is that uh, pure difference is a kind of thing where difference, like let's say the category of difference, in order to actualize itself, has to differ from itself. So that's why let's take again difference. If it becomes pure difference, if it becomes like pure difference in the sense that it is identical with itself, it is fully a difference, then it will become an identity. So it will be a failure. Again, in the second case, difference, if it differentiates from itself, then it becomes pure difference. But it will then become pure difference only because it sort of it is besmirched by the mediation of identity. That's why I focus on this tautology. Jack is Jack. It is tautology of absolute identity and also absolute difference, because and it is precisely this absolute difference itself which is identical with itself, but only in the sense when we say that difference differentiates. So again, to put it in points, first, this proposition Jack is the case of absolute identity, but also absolute difference. And how is that? In the case of difference, difference, in order to be pure difference, differ from itself. That's why difference differs from it's a kind of pure thing, pure difference. And and how it is actualized? It is actualized in the kind of in the proposition which is pure proposition of pure identity. So this very proposition is a kind of pinpoint, like is a point where we can actually say that here opposites are actually coinciding. So I was thinking of the word pure difference in this sense. So I don't know how can I say, how can I situate it into a kind of signifier, in a kind of a pure signifier. Pure signifier is a kind is of the kind where uh, uh, like it is a signifier without any signified, like a transcendental subject. I guess in Zizek, he says that pure signifier is the one which is again without any signified attached to it, and therefore a purely transcendental kind of. And this purity, this pure signifier, uh, uh, yeah, it is a speculative correlative. It speculatively coincides with, speculatively, therefore dialectically coincides with its own opposite, which is signified without a signifier. And signified without signifier is Zizek says that it is objet, which can't really be symbolized, and yet it is there, and no, and however it is not there in the sense that it is there empirically or positively, but only structurally. This is what Zizek says, and yeah, I can only think of this word pure difference in the sense in this sense, like, am I able to answer your question? I don't know.
Well, I think that does answer a question. So, yes. Okay, so we're done with the question and answers round. Thank you, Gordon, so much for your presentation, and thank you to the participants as well. Himanshu, you can take it.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Uh, this is just to announce that, and special thanks to Gautam for this presentation today. This research dialogue, as you know by now, that it is supposed to be a continuous series where we invite people. Actually, you can also fill this form, which is available on our websites also, form for participants or as presenters. I'll announce the next talk we have on 1st March by Mohammad Shad, who was just here, and he just defended his PhD thesis from IIIT Bhopal. The time will be same 3:30 p.m. The title of the talk will be "The Problem of Religion and God and the Idea of Radical Evil in Kant's Religion Within Limits of Bare Reason." I think Shad was here, and you will meet him again on 1st March. If you have or anyone has something to say, we can. Else, we can close the session for today. And could you share the name on the website? Of course, you must have seen the poster or something, but otherwise you can just see Let's Talk Tattva. I will share the link here, or the philosophy project. It's a collaborative project by these two forums, both the student and forums. Although we are saying that things are about philosophy, but they're actually philosophical. They need to be philosophical. We are not closing gates for anyone besides or outside the discipline of philosophy. There's no such concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you,
joining.
everyone, for joining. You can follow us on our socials as well and find us on our website.
You would be thankful if you share it around the initiative so that more people can join us and more people can present us, so that more dialogue can happen and we learn from each other. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
I just have one question. Like, can any participant, any presenter present again, like after some time?
I think yes, if you have a different thing to
Okay,
present.
okay. Okay, okay. Actually, I'm developing this. I will, if I will present in a more developed form. So yeah.
Sure, sure. You can. I think this is the idea that if we have feedback, we improve it, and then we can come again. It's not a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
You can join
Thank
as
you
a
so much.
participant for our next session.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
I think participants might already be in the WhatsApp group where you can communicate later if you have, let's say, any idea or anything to communicate with any other participant. I'm sure you might be in the WhatsApp group, but if not, you will be added in the next rolling list, which means that just 1 week before the next lecture, which is on 1st March. Yeah. So, yeah. Thank you, everyone. We can close it today.
Thank you, everyone. A good
Thank
weekend.
you.